All right, everyone, so we're going to continue here with Chapter 8, Setup 4 on the micro pullback. Now, it's a little sunnier here today, so the lighting, I'm going to be a little dark, but I compensated by wearing a really bright shirt. And you know, funny enough, Uncle Steve got this for me, and he said he went to the Army Navy surplus store, and they were giving these away. They used these camouflage uniforms back in the 70s when they were, you know, disco era. So they don't work so well as it turns out today. So you can get them real cheap. All right, so Chapter 8, the setup here we're going to talk about is the micro pullback. So micro pullbacks, this is definitely getting a little bit more advanced, and this is something that probably will not be the first strategy that you master. If I was going to guess, I would, again, say probably it's going to be the first pullback, the second pullback, which is, you know, a pullback setup, bull flag, then ABCD patterns, which are a little more complex, but usually pretty good. Maybe half dollar, whole dollars, you'll start to get early entries, and then micro pullbacks. Again, half dollars and whole dollars also being a little more advanced. Both half dollar and whole dollar breakouts and micro pullbacks are much stronger in a hot market. In a cold market, you want to be really careful trading this setup because you will get yourself into false breakouts left and right. So essentially what's happening is the stock squeezes up so quickly that it barely has time to pull back. So essentially it doesn't pull back as you would look at maybe your 1 minute chart. But in fact, if you zoom in a little closer, you would see that it does. And so, for instance, on CLPS right here, as this squeezed up, which, by the way, crushed today, $133,000 in 1 day. That's maybe a little inspiration for you. So CLPS goes from 5 all the way up to 14. Then it pulls back and it rips at the open up to about 20. So right here on the 5 minute chart, if you were a trader on the 5 minute chart, you would have said, well, there was no pullback here. I couldn't have possibly traded it. Maybe you could have bought it here into what turned out to be a false breakout. And maybe you could have bought this first pullback on the 5 minute, which was fine. And maybe you could have bought this, which is a break of the volume weighted average price, or this, which is a 5 minute pullback. But what about when they are ripping like that and you actually want to buy it? So then we can pull in the 1 minute chart here. And of course, during this 5 minute period, there were some 1 minute micro pullbacks, and this is one right here. Now, this is a very micro pullback in the sense that this candle hit a high of 969, the next one dipped down to 870, and then immediately surges up to over $12. So it pulls back just for a second. So we would call that a micro pullback. And that absolutely, for an active and aggressive trader, presents an opportunity to jump in it. These are quick trades, and so they're not necessarily beginner level trades, but once you start to get a little confidence, you'll start to be able to visualize those pullbacks even as they occur on the level 2. Because of course, as I'm watching the level 2 for one of these stocks, I'm seeing, oh, okay, we just hit a high, and I kind of mentally mark, well, what was the high of right here? I can already say the high is 1135, 1150. So if we all of a sudden drop down to 1078 and then surge right back up, I don't have to look at the chart to recognize that that presented a micro pullback. But the chart does help us visualize what potentially is the right entry, which is the first candle to make a new high. And then we could even dial it in further if we really wanted to and look at the 10-second chart for those of you that do have access to 10-second charts. And here, now the 10-second chart again, is in the context of being inside a 1 minute chart. And so this was our pullback that was at 869. But it looks like even before that, there was a little bit of an entry right around here at 850. Micro kind of pullback right under the half dollar. Even looks like there was another one right about here. And maybe a small one right there. And if we continue higher up, you'll see that there was another one right here. Another micro pullback right there, and another one right here. And that was while this just kept kind of going higher and higher on the 1 minute chart. So these varying forms of micro pullback, this is the one that I just showed you right here. And let me get my drawing tool here. Let me load this up. All right, so activate. Okay, so this right here is when you actually have a small red candle. Now this could be something you would see on the 5-minute chart. It could be something you see on the 1 minute. It could be something you see on the 10-second chart. But that's the pattern. Candle up, a sort of blip, small little red candle, and then it continues. Now this would be even more aggressive because here it pops up, it pulls down, inside this candle it dips down, and then it surges right back up. So to visualize something like that, you would really, to actually see that and catch that dip, you would really have to be watching the level 2. And then this would be a momentary pause, and this would be typically around a $0.50 or a whole dollar where it taps it, and then just for a second kind of hesitates, and then surges through. And it probably would have been hesitating because there was a big seller on the level 2 in that instance. So this is a setup that you certainly can't trade without time and sales in level 2. You could trade it on a 5-minute chart, but then it's not really a micro pullback on the 5-minute chart. You know, this on a 5-minute chart is just kind of a very small bull flag. So primarily we're looking at these on the 1 minute and maybe even a 10-second chart or something like that. So let me read this slide for you, and I'll just put it up on like this, and I'm gonna read it. So the entry can be within the 1 minute candle. So as the stock is surging up, then it dips down, we buy that dip, or we wait for it to curl back up, and as it breaks back over a $0.50 or a whole dollar, that can be the long. It's an aggressive entry. It should be reserved for stocks that have already proven they are very strong. In other words, probably a stock that's parabolic, like CLPS was. Some of the best micro pullbacks are the first 1 minute candle to make a new high. They're in the context of either the first pullback after a fresh 5-minute breakout. So we get a fresh 5-minute breakout and then a 1 minute micro pullback before continuing. But other times they're directly after the open or directly following breaking news. So when you have a stock, and we had this yesterday on CCIV, that had breaking news come out, and we could just look at the 10-second chart on this. When you have breaking news come out, typically the high frequency trading algorithms jump on that and you get that immediate spike. So you get the immediate spike and then it might hesitate for a moment. And during that hesitation, that's when we're getting our micro pullback. So I'm just looking at this on a short time frame because when you have that algo high frequency spike, it's so quick, it sometimes just goes right into a halt. So that's essentially what happened right here. So this went into a halt within 20 seconds. 10, 20 seconds, it's into a halt. 10, 20 seconds from the press release hitting the news wire. It just goes straight into a halt. So those are, I mean, that's a response time that you can't even compete with. You can see that this kind of did a little micro pullback at 45, and then it opens and it actually dipped, and then this technically was a micro pullback as it broke over 50. And then this was technically almost a micro pullback, but then it went into a halt. So in fact, this one didn't really have the best micro pullbacks, but often the times we'd be looking for that would be when a stock has just started to open up because of breaking news, or in the case of a pre-market stock like CLPS, the news was out, but then as more and more traders log in and it starts to make its way up the gap scanner, you'll see that volume increasing. All right, so let's see. So this is a hot market type of setup, but ultimately if a stock has just squeezed up 10 to 20% in the last 5 or 10 minutes and it's near halt levels, micro pullbacks will draw in new traders and stop out early short sellers. It dips for a second, maybe a moment of relief for a short seller or a moment of opportunity for a long trader, and then it keeps going. So if the stock has a lower float, the market is hot, this is a setup that will work even better. If the stock is only up 5 to 10 cents and is a higher float, I wouldn't even consider a micro pullback setup. So this, we may at times trade stocks that are slightly higher float, 50, 60, 70 million shares, maybe 100 million or even higher. I'm rarely, almost never, even if those are moving quickly, going to do a micro pullback on them. I'm going to want the confirmation of really clean charts, a clean pullback, a clean ABCD pattern. So in order to feel the confidence to press the buy button on a micro pullback on a stock that's already extended, I need to see green buyers on the tape. I need to see those green orders going through on the tape, because those signify to me that other traders are stepping up to buy, either to go long or to cover a short position. And either way is buying, which is good. If there is low volume during the micro pullback, so it pops up and then it just kind of stalls out, volume sort of just stops, or we see a lot of red, then I'm gonna wait, because this may not be a micro, this may be the beginning of a true pullback. It might look micro right now, but it's just pulling back. So really, for me, the entry is, it pops up, it pulls back, and then I'm waiting for that volume to come in, the green on the tape, to indicate that people are stepping up. And that tells me that people are not waiting. Either short sellers are scared and they're just like, I gotta get out, or long traders are not waiting. FOMO is hotter or higher in this market, and so then I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. But if it starts to pull back, we only see red, volume is declining, then it's still pulling back. And maybe at that point, we start switching our focus from micro pullback to waiting for the first proper 1 minute pullback. Alternatively, if I see a really big seller, such as 25,000, 30,000, 100,000 shares, I may watch for that seller to thin out a little bit, 19, 15, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, before pressing that buy button. As the seller thins out, green orders will be going through the tape as people buy up that seller's shares. Now, if I'm feeling aggressive and confident in the stock due to the daily setup, the market sentiment, the specific stock characteristics, and my own P&L on the day, I may start buying more aggressively. So today on CLPS, on dips, I was being pretty aggressive on that. Of course, yesterday we saw that big move on SCKT. I ended up having a great day, up, I think it was 43,000 on that stock or something like that. And so, given the fact that yesterday was a good day and CLPS looked similar in sort of a technical way, I thought, well, if SCKT did that yesterday, and traders, of course, are, that's our recent kind of memory, that chart is going to be kind of applied to this stock because they're so similar in price. So we may want to set higher expectations, and for that reason, I may want to be a little more aggressive. So this was the right time to be aggressive. But on a day where, the market is colder and I didn't have a profit cushion yet, then I probably wouldn't have been so aggressive. So the target, it's a retest of high a day and potentially a squeeze into a halt. The idea in this setup is to be potentially entering a stock that is about to become parabolic, or that is parabolic, and to continue to ride that momentum higher. Using the first sort of high-risk trades to build a profit cushion on the stock, and then wait for a pullback or a dip entry for my next big position. So usually a micro pullback in terms of position sizing isn't going to be my full-size position. I'm not usually going to jump in 20, 30,000 shares, 50,000 shares on a micro pullback. I might do 4,000 to 8,000, maybe to 12,000, maybe to 16, maybe to 20 if I already am up quite a bit. But usually I'm going to be a little bit more conservative, because when I look back on the chart, if it ends up being a loser, I'd look back and I'd say, wait, so I just got in at the middle of this huge green candle. That was an extended entry, and it's one thing to buy an extended entry when the market is hot, but it's not always a good idea to take that type of trade with full size. So the risk factor is, this is an aggressive entry. False breakouts are not uncommon. You don't really have a lot of confirmation for the trade, other than maybe the first candle kind of making a new high on a very micro time frame, whether it's a 10-second or even a 1 minute, but it's so tight that it hasn't really formed enough of a setup that probably it's going to attract the interest of a lot of other traders out there. This risk is higher if the volume is light, because a sudden flush could drop the stock right back down and could result in a much larger loss or a lot of slippage with large share size. That's especially true pre-market. The stop loss can be the low of the last 1 minute candle, or an arbitrary 10, 20 cent stop, depending on the spreads and what you would expect would be kind of the slippage you might anticipate. Profit target anywhere from 10, 20, 40 cents, but maybe higher if it's a higher price stock. This is probably the most common setup for parabolic stocks, buying micro pullbacks around $0.50, whole dollars. It's as the stock breaks out on the first 5 minute candle to make a new high, a 1 minute micro pullback as it rips higher. And then even as it's forming the first sort of 1 minute breakout, You can have a 10-second micro pullback inside that 1 minute chart. So that's where we start to really see these pick up. And again, it requires watching the level 2 pretty closely. Oftentimes they're moving so quickly that they don't pull back for more than just a few seconds or maybe a few minutes before surging back up. So these are times where if you were saying, well, I'm a beginner trader, so I want to focus more on 5-minute pullbacks because, you know, those are usually a little bit more predictable, they're a little bit safer. Well, the problem is on a lot of these stocks, by the time you get that 5-minute pullback, it's already gone up 300%, 400%. Now it just fades off the high. Because even on a 5 minute, it's like it's too extended to take an entry here. So in those cases, 1 minute micro pullbacks are often our best entries. So I'll move my video up here for you. So this is an example of a 1 minute micro pullback right here at 449. It also coincides with the $0.50, and you've seen this example before. So that's a little micro pullback. It just hit the $0.50 just for a second, pulled back, and then continued. Now, Miles, your question there, would I trade this with a small account? So the answer is that yes, I personally would, but I'm not a beginner trader at this point. So it's hard for me to say if I was a beginner trader, would I trade this with a small account? If I was a beginner trader, I would, you know, I'd probably focus, I might take a 1 minute micro pullback like this because it does have more of a 1 minute look to it. I might be more cautious about doing the 10-second ones. Ultimately, you wouldn't want to be trading any of these type of micro pullbacks until you'd proven you were trading them well and profitably in a simulator. And so if you are, then that's what's giving you the confidence, more so than me saying I would or I wouldn't. I think if you have the confidence, then you certainly should. And if you don't have the confidence in them yet, then you should keep practicing. But if that goal is to make 10 cents, 20 cents a day, you know, to start building up the account, then ultimately you want to trade less and you want to focus on the highest quality setups. So a micro pullback like this on a stock that's clearly strong, and if this was the strongest stock on the market on that day, then that might have presented you with the best opportunity. And I think that would be probably fine. But some of the more aggressive micro pullbacks that don't even look like a pullback, it just tapped that level, dipped for a fraction of a second and then continued higher, that might be too aggressive. So here's another one, Pran. Now this is a little, this one would have probably been pretty aggressive because the volume is so light. So you can see here, very light volume. It squeezes up, it dips to 316, and then it surges higher, up to 391. This right here is not a 1 minute pullback, and I'll just draw this for you. So this right here is not a 1 minute pullback. But this right here is. So I would have probably said that this would be too aggressive for a sort of small account beginner trader. Letting it squeeze up and then form that first proper pullback probably would have been safer. And then once it proved the strength of actually doing a nice pullback like what it did right here, then perhaps taking this would have been okay if you had a little bit of a cushion. Perhaps. But now this is the second pullback up here. Usually we want to be focusing primarily on the first and the second, not the third, sorry, it's the third pullback up there. So once we get into the third and fourth pullbacks, that's when risk starts to increase. So this is a micro pullback before a 50% squeeze from 316 up to 460, which, you know, ultimately is, I mean, that's impressive. That's certainly something that we like to see. Let's see. Now let me just want to see what slide that's on. So that's 720. I just want to get this up here so I can see. And we're going to have some live examples on this one, on this, or in this section. Let's see, we've got 3 live examples that we'll go over. Okay, so here on this lighter volume, as you can see again, kind of increasing, surges up, it dips down, and then it rips through the high, which also happens to be the $0.50 of 350. So it breaks through that level, it surges up to 4, hits that level, pulls back, and does pop higher to 410 before reversing. You can tell that this is a lower volume stock just based on looking at the volume bars here, and then kind of all of a sudden peaks, volume picks up, but then you've got this high volume red candle. So this, for the break of the 350 spot, is certainly a fine micro pullback. Whether or not this would have been a good trade for a small account, that I'm not really sure about. Here's another micro pullback before a 30% squeeze. So that was right here. Just a brief little micro pullback. So you can see how on the 1 minute chart, it surges up, pulls back just for a second, and then it continues higher. So that would have been your first safe kind of dip entry, your first safe kind of spot to look for a pullback entry. Barely noticeable, but it was there. Now, this is the next spot right here, and that would have been okay. First candle to make a new high, and it comes back up and hits the high of 1350 and then has resistance. So that would have been fine. You could have taken that trade as well. In this case, we have APOP. This is actually on a 15-second chart. So I actually have to update that. So this is a 15-second chart. So it's a close-up view, but you can see it surges up to 10, micro pullback, and then goes higher. Goes up to 11, sort of hesitates for a second, surges up here to 12. High there of 1225, that's a micro pullback then for a long over 1225, and that's a little dip there possibly for another trade. So as we look at this, knowing that this is a 15-second chart, you could use 15, 30, whatever it is, it just kind of breaks down those 1 minute candles so you can see them a little bit better. And yeah, you can certainly see how that was a little dip, moment of hesitation underneath 10 bucks. A little bit here, but not anything that was probably logical for a trade. Maybe a small one here, but then it stalls out, dips down, but then comes back up. You'd be able to visualize these better when you're watching them in combination with the level 2. This is a 1 minute chart. And this was actually a pretty interesting one because this stock squeezes from 27 up to 35 at halts. Then it goes up to 45, 47, drops down. First 1 minute candle to make a new high, comes back up, double tops, resistance, drops back down, halts going down, looks like it might be a short. That became a bear trap, and then it opens and immediately surges right back to 47 and halts going up. And then it surges all the way to 62. So that's where it really started to pick up. You know, all of a sudden it really ripped right there. And so that's what we would have been looking at. And this actually went as high here as $110. Actually, it went even higher than that. Went to like I think 140 or something like that. But that was a huge move. Let's see. And I see you mentioning that PETZ is halted. So let me look at that chart here. So this is kind of similar to what we were looking at yesterday. This wouldn't right now be a micro pullback, although it's possible that, so a halt resumption can provide micro pullbacks. The halt time was 11:28 and 21 seconds, so resumption will be in about 1 minute. And remember we had drawn this level here at 1330, which sort of like what we had yesterday on SCKT at 1245, I thought is kind of a pivot. Now it's hit once. But if it breaks that level, then the target's 1410. So perhaps, and this has a pre-market high up around 19, so it does have some room to continue squeezing. So perhaps we squeeze in here on the resumption, just a little analysis of a micro pullback. We've got the 10-second chart, as you can see right here. The daily chart I can hide. We're not going to be looking at that right now. So I might do 1,500 shares, be a little bit more conservative on this. So put the order at 1350, like that. This stock we can ignore. I'll just go like that, so it just blanks it out. So yeah, that was GLSI, that other one. So resumption on this is going to be in about 10 seconds if it's a 5 minute long halt. So I'm going to put the order, I'm going to move it just a little higher, showing a 1320 resumption. Watching. So quick long there. That was just a momentary dip. So now this is a dip right here for the long. So I just bought that dip for the break through 14 and I'm all out. Boom, just like that. That's what we call a micro pullback. Hey, live trading. Made $5,000 on that. Thank you so much. PETZ. So this is now halting going up. Those were micro pullbacks. Did you see how fast that was? How fast can you be? Are you willing to be aggressive? Watch here, watching, looking for an add now over 1450. Halt levels moved up, added right there at 38. So I've got 4,500 shares. This is a dip, as you can see right here. This is actually the beginning of a 1 minute chart. Now let's see what it does. The high is 1452. A nice breakout initially. Ooh, not liking that. So you know what? On this one, I'm not going to add on that. I'm just gonna have to take the loss. But I'll watch it on resumption, and we'll see if it bounces higher. So it opened at 12.55, and I was a little aggressive on that because I had a profit cushion. I kind of thought, you know, I'll go for the entry, which was at 14.35, to anticipate the break right through the $0.50. And you know what I didn't really wait for? I didn't wait for the green on the tape. I just kind of jumped right in. So it sort of surged, it popped, it started dipping, and I didn't really wait for the green. Now, again, that's a situation where I'm going to be a little more aggressive when I have a cushion. Certainly have a cushion on the day, no doubt about that. But in any case, so we'll see how that resolves. I'm probably going to give back a little bit of profit on it, but it's fine. In any case, it was a good micro pullback and a good reminder, easy come, easy go, certainly in this market. All right, so I'll just put that over there. So sitting at 137,000 right now, but holding 4,500 shares at $14. So we'll see where it resumes. Okay, so let's go back over here. So on this one right here, this squeezes up here, and then right in there as it starts to break out, right there, we get that micro pullback. Kind of a micro pullback, and then it pops higher. And this again is on, as you can see, the 1 minute chart. So just that little micro pullback, and then it continues. This was the first pullback after this 5 minute breakout. Now on Pixie, we have this one here. These are more proper 1 minute pullbacks because you have two candles at least. I would say when you have two candles, it's a nice pullback. You know, it's not quite the perfect pullback, but it's not, you know, it could be a little bit longer, but it's fine. So I wouldn't really say that's necessarily a micro pullback. It surges up, and then right in here, it pops over the volume weighted average price, pulls back, and that is a quick micro pullback right above VWAP. And then that right there is a micro pullback. Well, actually, that's more of a regular one. And then this is kind of a micro pullback right in here. And sometimes as they become longer pullbacks, they do start to just look more like a regular pullback and not really a micro pullback. And so they can, you know, they can kind of shift from one to the other. All right, so let's see. So we've got a live example here. Now I got to keep half an eye on resumption. So PETC halted at 34.27, so resumption will be 39.27. So we still have a couple minutes. All right, so let's see. All right, so OBLN. Let me move my video to the bottom corner there. So this is, let's see. So this is a lower price stock that pops up, and it's popping up right now. So you can see it squeezing up here to 120, 117, 120. It's hesitating here. And so in that hesitation, and then you see the green, that kind of forms a quick little micro pullback. I mean, a quick micro pullback. So we get that sort of hesitation right at 120. So we came up to this level, which on a cheaper stock, we sometimes see resistance, not just at the $0.50 and whole dollars, but even quarters and sometimes even every 5, 10 cents. So right here, there we go. So I get the long, my orders are at 22, 2 orders filled at 20, one's at 22. There's up to 28 in the halt. And you know, this is a price range where they halt fast. So those fast halts certainly do sometimes mess up the price action a little bit because you're like, man, this thing it's halting so quick. It's not really giving me a good chance to add or get a big winner on it. So that was a squeeze into the halt. So let's see. And then we're going to look for resumption here on this. Okay, so watching resumption. So it dips now. The new long is 140. The high is 140. Seeing green right here? There we go. So I add there for the break of 140. There's 145. I want to take a little off the table into this breakout. All right, so you've got 150 now, psychological resistance at the $0.50. So that's kind of the next spot that we're watching. Moving the order up to 150. Now this is starting to form a proper 1 minute pullback. Not quite, but you know, it's moving in that direction. All right, now let me pause this for a second. I've got to manage my my loser over here on PETZ. So hang on one second. So resumption is going to be about 27 seconds. Let's get our chart back up, or in about 7 seconds. So we're showing 12.55. So can I do a dip? Let's see if we get that pop back up to 13. So, you know, a setup like this, man, this thing is definitely on the weaker side. So I cut the loss on it. It is what it is. All right, so let's switch gear. Let's just focus back on this. All right, so anyways, and I guess, again, like I said, now it's halted again, coming down. This is the sort of irrational strength that we've been seeing. Irrational strength and then irrational weakness. I could certainly buy the dip on it, but, you know, I don't really want to get into over trading it. The real idea here was to watch those micro pullbacks, which actually we could even go down to like a 1 second chart here. So this was where I bought right there. And I thought it was, that's where I thought we were going to get the break back over, and I was wrong. But this entry down here, that one was solid. So we got the little dip there, and that one worked. So this was just a little, I don't think I waited for the volume confirmation. You can see the volume on these candles here is lighter. I didn't wait for that surge of green, which is, I mean, it's important. Again, though, when you have a cushion, sometimes you might feel you can be aggressive and just jump in and not wait for it. But anyway, so OBLN, 136, there's 140, 144. Here we go, break of the $0.50. So right there, I took profit off at the $0.50. New order, looks like is at 30. Maybe I'm looking to do a dip trade on this. Let's see. No, it looks like that was the end of the trade. All right, so let's look at got another example here. So that was a micro pullback, then into a halt. Yep. So now this is another one. Copy link, paste. Okay. So what do we have here? A quick micro pullback. So this is the stock WAFU. It has just broken over the volume weighted average price here. And it looks like the high is around 10.05 or 10.15. Orders at 10.30 right there. So we see this is our kind of 1 minute micro pullback. We break the volume weighted average price. And you know, at this point, hey, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. But you know, it is a bit of micro pullback, and it's not a bad time to take a little off the table into that squeeze. But it also, you know, kind of became a proper 1 minute pullback because of that red candle. That's nice resolution. That's really nice. And yeah, I just showed you just to answer that question, I just showed you the 1 second chart on PETZ just because I wanted to show you the sort of breakdown, because even the 10-second chart on that didn't exactly show what I was looking at because it was so quick. That just happened to be a really fast one. So, but easy come, easy go, certainly on that stock. All right, so let's see. So the high there. So let's back that up. So I did another little dip trade. Let's back this up here. Where's this next dip trade? All right, so I was in at 10.13, and then where did I add? Hold on, I gotta back this up. All right, let's go back to the beginning. Okay, so we've just broken through the volume weighted average price. Now we're doing a little pullback. First candle to make a new high is 10.15, so start buying when I see the green on the tape. The green confirmation right there. Look at that. So I buy, and then what do? Into that breakout, I want to take a little off the table. So I want to take a little off the table and pay myself, because you know what? I was right. It went from 10.14 to 10.50. Now maybe it does go all the way to 12, maybe not, but that's certainly a nice move. All right, so now the high is 10.60. Moving my new order up. I'm going to move my order up to 10.95, hands on the buy button. Over 10.60 is a possible long. Watch here. Now, I actually jumped in there for the break back over $0.50 psychological resistance, because I'm thinking if it breaks back over the $0.50, then we're going to go right to 60. So I'm in a little high at 51, 55, and 53. There we go, immediately through 60. Spread 60 by 82. So we've got a 22-cent spread. I could put an order on the ask to take a little out. I can glance at my cost basis, which is 42 with 6,000 shares. There we go, there's 11. And I went ahead and added at 80 and 83. So the high there was in the 70s. I added a little bit more, 2,000 shares, not big size. Now taking a little off the table, offsetting right there. There's 11.20 on the ask. Not filling. See how those orders are kind of not filling super well? And then it drops back down. Holding 1,400 shares now at 10.42. That's a nice move. Target on something like this starts to become high of day. So, will we get that squeeze back to the highs, which is 12. So I'm all out right now, and I just added back. So let's go back and look at that. So this starts to get into the high-speed trading, which we're going to talk about in Chapter 11, which is doing those aggressive breakouts. I don't want to get too far into this. I will try to stay focused mostly on micro pullbacks. So what's the micro pullback here? The high is 20. It dips for a second. I would say this long here is actually a dip trade off of 11. So this is just this is like a 20, well, no, it's actually only 3 minute long. It's a 3 minute long video. It includes a dip trade. It also includes this micro pullback. So this right here is a dip trade. Stop is 10.99. So I want to see it hold 11, 4,500 shares. Now the high looked like it was in the 11.20s, and it looks like I sold that break even at 11. So now I kind of open up the chart a little bit. High was actually 11.44. All right, so it was a little bit higher. High of that candle, I checked the high of that candle, 12.40 or whatever it was. Are we going to form a 1 minute pullback right here, a micro pullback? Now watch this, because the high is 11.44. So we're getting pretty close. Orders is 11.66, hands on the buy button. Again, I'm buying the dip, stop is 11. This is a dip entry. And what I'm expecting, there you go. So that when you see something like that, that's when I certainly feel like I'm firing on all cylinders. I get the dip entry, and then I get that, come on. That's awesome. That's a really nice trade. So let's back that up for just a second. So the initial entry on this was not a micro pullback. The initial entry in this case was actually a dip trade, which we'll talk about in Chapter 8. It's its own section. So this was a dip trade with a stop just under the psychological support of 11. So dip trade, and now I'm adding, this is the micro pullback long. The micro pullback long is the break through the high. As you can see, these two candles, high, pullback, micro pullback is the break through that level. So the proper long for a micro pullback is 11.44. And so into that second setup, I'm adding. So sometimes my best trades will begin as a dip trade, and then they turn into an ad for the break of the $0.50. And then they turn in maybe to an ad for the first 1 minute candle to make a new high. And so I could add to each of those levels if I'm still feeling confident, and potentially that's when I start to see some really nice trades. Okay, so it breaks through this level. So now you have a couple things going here. You've got people buying this who bought the 1 minute micro pullback. You have people who stopped out on the short side on the break of 11.44. You have people that bought the break of the $0.50, 11.50. And you have people like me that are in maybe from this last pullback here, or that bought the dip off of 11. Target, logically, is up here around 12. What's going on? Let's see. There we go. Okay. So now let's watch this. There's 70. There's 90. And I took it off the table. I sold the whole thing at 11.81. I would guess that was a mistake by pressing the wrong hotkey. I would have typically wanted to sell half there, not the whole thing. So I accidentally, I think, sold the whole thing. Green, but not exactly what I planned. Now, risk, double top. So caution flag, we've got double top here at 39. So some people would even just start shorting this right at 12.39 because it's a double top. Now, if it goes to 12.52 and halts, all of a sudden, they just shorted into a strong stock. Oh, and it looks like we've actually got room to 1545. So maybe, I don't know, but that looks now a bit like a pivot, right? Kind of similar to what we had on PETZ, similar to what we had on SCKT. And, you know, the pivot on PETZ, although I lost on that trade, the pivot was still good. It just was that I should have taken everything off the table instead of adding back where I added back. All right, so halted now at 1252 and resumption showing 1275. All right, but that's the end of that video. So I'm just gonna make a note to myself here on this. Oops, that was WAFU, to make sure that's also added in the dip trades so we can go back and show that. So dip trade also. All right, so false breakout on a micro pullback, but still profitable due to a quick exit. All right, let's see what this one has for us. And I think, as I mentioned, again, there's a lot of overlap with some of these examples. Some are a dip trade, and then they're micro pullback, their first 1 minute candle to make a new high. So Raj, to answer your question there, why I sold the whole thing. So usually, why would I usually sell half? I would usually sell half because usually I want to keep some keep some skin in the game for the bigger move. I don't mind selling half and selling another half as it continues higher, but to just sell the whole thing into that spike when it hasn't even broken that kind of, critical level or double topped yet, that's just selling a little too early. All right, so here on CLSN, look at this. We have a pullback happening right now at 350, which is the $0.50. This is a micro pullback. I just bought right there at 46. I see a seller at 49, and I'll probably add there. See, it goes, see the countdown? It's a very quick countdown. 16, 14, 12, 11, right to 50, surges through. There's 52. I put an order out at 51. This is a stock, it's only up 15%. And it looks like I got filled at 51. So on that one, this was a micro pullback, but kind of a false breakout. It didn't really give us that big move, and I think it was the right move to take that off the table. All right, so when we get into the section on parabolic stocks, and certainly when we're talking about high-speed breakout trading, we're going to see some more examples. So let's continue on here to the next section on in Chapter 8, which is long setup 5, buying a break just simply through the high of day breakout.